We're about to shatter a massive, toxic myth about success. You've been sold a complete lie. Honestly, we all have. We're constantly told this very simple story. Just find someone successful, copy exactly what they do, and you'll win too. Sounds perfectly logical, right? Well, it's dead wrong. In this explainer, we're digging into some wild historical data from the Indian Green Revolution that completely destroys this idea. We're going to look at the actual numbers. Because blindly copying success, it's not a shortcut, it's a trap, and it can completely wreck you. Let's get into it. Picture this scenario. Your neighbor tries a brand new trick. Maybe he's a farmer who buys this expensive, highly touted new seed. And suddenly, he is making bank. His profits absolutely skyrocket. He upgrades his whole life. He looks like an absolute genius. The proof is literally staring you in the face right across the fence. You see the massive harvest, you see the new wealth. The success is undeniably real. And the blueprint just seems so painfully obvious, doesn't it?
So what do? You copy him. Naturally, you buy the exact same seed, you replicate his exact strategy, you follow his blueprint to the absolute letter. And what happens next? You go entirely bankrupt. Your crop completely fails, your business tanks, you lose absolutely everything. And guys, this isn't just some made-up thought experiment. This exact nightmare played out for thousands of real people who followed the so-called rules of success, copied the winners, and were left with absolutely nothing.
So why did it fail? The reason is brutal, but honestly, it's incredibly simple. You are not him. What worked flawlessly for your neighbor relied on invisible, underlying conditions that you just do not possess. You copied his actions, sure, but you couldn't copy his reality. You completely ignored your own unique environment. Same effort, utterly different outcome. We get so obsessed with mimicking the visible actions that we totally blind ourselves to the invisible foundations that made it all work in the first place.
This actually brings us to a massive historical mystery. Back in the 1960s, India introduced new miracle seeds to fight widespread starvation. This was the dawn of the Green Revolution. The stakes were literally life and death. Now, for the wheat farmers, that copycat strategy worked flawlessly. They copied their wealthy neighbors, and boom, they got rich too. But the rice farmers? The exact same strategy failed miserably. Half the country struck gold by copying, while the other half crashed and burned using that very same logic. Why on earth did that happen?
Well, at the time, traditional experts looked at this data and made a shockingly lazy assumption. They saw rice farmers refusing to blindly copy their successful neighbors, and what did the academics say? They called the farmers stubborn. They labeled them backward. They just assumed these folks were terrified of new technology or lacked education. They judged the people instead of actually looking at the environment. But as we dig deeper into the actual data, we see something incredible. The experts were dead wrong.
The real answer is all about a stark environmental contrast. Wheat enjoyed basically foolproof conditions. The soil in those wheat-growing regions was incredibly uniform across massive distances. And the new wheat seeds, like the Sonalaka variety, were robust little tanks. They'd grow almost anywhere. But rice? Rice faced a highly sensitive, unpredictable, and chaotic environment. The soil could change drastically from one farm to the very next. And those new rice seeds, like the Padma variety, they were incredibly fragile.
Basically, rice came with what we can call hidden stats. It's kind of like a complex video game. You look over the fence and you see your neighbor's beautiful, tall rice crop, but you cannot visually observe his exact soil salinity. You can't measure the microscopic waterlogging levels under the dirt. You can't see his precise vulnerability to local pests. These invisible variables dictated total success or total failure. Your neighbor's booming farm was basically a visual illusion, hiding all these complex, invisible stats.
And the hard data exposes this truth perfectly. Just look at the massive gap in crop yield variance. Wheat sits at a highly predictable 0.49. Low variance just means predictability. If your neighbor gets a great wheat harvest, you almost certainly will too. But rice? The variance for rice is a staggering 2.45. It's a total roller coaster. Yields swung wildly from farm to farm because of those hidden stats. That single number completely proves that your neighbor's success with rice was mathematically irrelevant to your own farm.
Which uncovers this brilliant, invisible logic. When your environment is uniform, like wheat, the information you get from watching your neighbor is rock solid. So yeah, copy them. It makes perfect sense. But when the environment is chaotic, like rice, that information is basically garbage. Smart people don't blindly copy garbage data. They rationally choose to ignore other success when the underlying data is fundamentally flawed. It wasn't stubbornness at all. It was calculated survival based on information reliability. So instead of blindly copying, these rice farmers developed a genius data-driven strategy of their own. They practically became their own scientists. Step 1. Observe the hype, but stay super skeptical. Step 2. Realize your farm's hidden stats are uniquely yours. Step 3. Entirely ignore your neighbor's flashy results. And Step 4. Run your own trials. You test it on your own tiny patch of land, with your own soil, to get your own reliable data.
And look at how the adoption data proves this beautifully. When rice farmers finally did adopt the new miracle seeds, they went all in. They dedicated 33% of their land to those initial tests. Wheat adopters? They only dedicated 12%. Why such a massive difference? Because rice farmers were forced to experiment entirely on their own. They had zero reliable social proof. They had to risk a larger chunk of their own property just to see if the tech would actually survive their specific hidden stats. This completely flips the traditional narrative upside down. These farmers were not backward. They weren't afraid of progress. They were absolute risk management geniuses. They were protecting their livelihoods from a deeply flawed comparison. They understood a fundamental truth that most people, and even the top academic experts of the time, completely missed. Context is literally everything. There is this one line straight from the research that is just an absolute academic mic drop. It perfectly captures everything we've been talking about. The fact that a new technology worked well for a neighbor does not imply that it will work well for you. Wow, that is incredibly powerful. It is the ultimate death of blind imitation. Just because you see something working perfectly with your own two eyes does not mean it will survive in your specific ecosystem.
We hear the phrase best practices all the time, right? In business, in startup culture, in education, in life. But blindly copying best practices is a massive, dangerous trap if your underlying conditions don't match. If your soil is different, the best seed on the market is going to bankrupt you. You cannot skip the hard work. You have to adapt, you have to experiment, you have to understand your own environment before you import someone else's solution.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Take a hard look at your own life. Look at your business, your career trajectory, your daily choices. Are you blindly copying someone else's success while completely ignoring your own hidden stats? Are you out there desperately trying to plant rice using a wheat strategy? Stop staring at your neighbor's harvest. Start analyzing your own soil. Because honestly, that is the only way you actually win.